whether it's the NWHL, WNBA, NWSL. It's not like the athletes aren't putting a good product, on the ice, on the field, on the court. It's just that no one knows we're out here,
This week we have Rebecca Morse on, and y'all, let me tell you, she is a genuine star in women's hockey. Like, four-time professional player, all-star. She's won the Isabel Cup. Hope I'm saying that right. And I mean, Providence superstar. Like, how have we got so lucky to have her on? Thank you for being here.
Of course. Well, what an intro. I appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to chatting today. It's actually Isabel Cup, but a lot of people call it that.
I I
No
tried
hard
my
feelings.
best. They should put the pronunciation of some
Yeah.
things up there.
Yeah, the phonetic spelling. No, because a lot of people also call the NWHL the WNHL. So it's
Yeah.
common mistakes, and I try to, do my due diligence and correct people.
Okay, on that one, people just need to read.
Yeah.
Just take your time and read the letters in the right order.
Yeah, that's less excusable for sure.
Yeah. So how did you get into playing hockey?
So I grew up in New Jersey. Girls hockey was not really big when I was a kid. I didn't really know any other girls who played hockey. And I really just stuck to playing recreationally, street hockey and roller hockey. I grew up on a cul-de-sac, so there wasn't a lot of, car traffic. It was perfect for, some pickup games. So I, learned how to rollerblade. It sort of came naturally to me. And I really enjoyed it. My brother and I, my whole family really, my dad skated too, my uncle, not my mom, but I wish she had. We would be out there all the time, just shooting pucks, blading around. And I fell in love with it pretty early on when I started that, and became a big New Jersey Devils fan. So naturally, I decided that I wanted to transition to ice, try it out, see how I liked it. And I did that when I was 8 years old. So that's when I started playing ice hockey, and really just stuck with it from there. I mean, soccer was my favorite sport when I was younger, and pretty soon hockey overtook soccer as my favorite sport. Once I started playing more competitively on a travel team with girls. Yeah, there's no better feeling than being on the ice in a hockey rink. So still love soccer, but I was a very athletic kid growing up. Hockey is just the sport that stuck.
Like in all the Disney movies, like the Lucky Ducks or whatever that Disney movie is called, and they're in the cul-de-sac playing hockey on the street, and I was like, do people actually do that, or is that like a TV thing? But it's nice to see that. Yeah. Did the whole, is that a real, the whole neighborhood comes out and they're playing in the streets and stuff?
At least on the block that I grew up on, it was like that, because I grew up in a suburban town. There were a lot of kids around my age in the surrounding houses on my street. So yeah, it wasn't just hockey, honestly. We played pretty much every sport, and, everyone would come out. That's how I spent most of my afternoons, after school, on the weekends, when I wasn't, doing organized activities. I was always outside with the kids in the neighborhood. So, I mean, it helps when you have that sort of upbringing where you can play pickup games, and, it's not too serious, but you're with your friends, and, regardless of, whether it's something that people continue to pursue competitively and carry on, everyone wanted to be out there and at least try to sort of be part of the group and have fun.
Did you always know, I want to play hockey in college? I can see myself being able to perform at that level.
Not always. I mean, I think my first dream was to play in the NHL. Then that evolved to, playing in prep school. Because at the time, my young adolescent mind thought that was, what I should do if I wanted to take my game to the next level. Like I said, girls hockey was really just developing at the time in New Jersey. So a lot of players were looking elsewhere for opportunities. And that wasn't to say that you had to go to prep school by any means in order to take your game to the next level. but that was something that I was definitely interested in, just in terms of being in that environment with a lot of other athletes, that type of environment. So after that, the dream really became to play Division I in college and to play in the Olympics, play in the national team. So again, it sort of evolved over time where, the first time I laced up the skates and went on the ice, I was not thinking about college. I was 8 years old. But, of course you have dreams, you have aspirations for most kids, I think most young athletes, to play professionally. So the NWHL didn't exist at the time. There was no professional women's hockey. So I couldn't aspire to play in a women's league. I wanted to play with the men, in the NHL. So that's part of, why I'm so passionate about growing women's hockey, because, it's really awesome that we have a league now, but how can we take it to that next step and grow it and make it sustainable, something that, where players don't have to have full-time jobs on the side, in order to be able to, put food on the table. And, that's where we're at now. So, one day, that's what we're working for, one day where, women can just play hockey and have that be their only career.
Exactly. That is why I kind of wanted you to come on and tell us some about the NWHL, especially hockey, because I feel like hockey in general is not a sport a lot of people talk about, but especially in the Northeast and Canada and places like that, it's like baseball or basketball or football everywhere else, because no one wants to be outside in -3 degrees in New Jersey in the winter. So y'all are all at the hockey rink. And how was that? Did you ever feel pressure from not necessarily your family or anything, but you did go to a prep school and you played hockey, you said 60, 65 games a season. Did you ever feel this is not, I'm losing the feeling of wanting to play hockey. This is becoming more of the business side of hockey and not the thing I fell in love with playing outside?
In high school, I would say no. That probably didn't hit until college, towards the end of college. But I pretty much always wanted to be playing hockey as a kid. And, I was the type of kid that you didn't really have to, I coach hockey, youth hockey now. So try to encourage my girls who are really serious about it, watch hockey in your free time, any level, men or women. Work on stick handling at home in your free time, because hockey's, to your point, hockey's a type of sport where, you really have to put in, first of all, there are a lot of barriers to entry. It's a very expensive sport. Ice time's expensive, the equipment's expensive, travel's expensive. In addition to, the demands on your time, but you really need ice in order to train, right? In order to practice or at least simulate it as closely as possible. So that's why I tell the girls that I coach, you need to be honing your skills away from the rink, because you might only have an hour or a few hours every week to actually practice on the ice. It's not like soccer or basketball. You can't just pick up a ball and go, shoot around, dribble around. So that's kind of how you, by training in other ways through roller hockey, street hockey, just stick handling at home in the street. That's how you're really going to improve. And nobody really had to tell me to do that. At times I did have, a little bit of pressure of hey, Rebecca, from my dad, hey, Rebecca, if you want to achieve these goals that you have set out for yourself, maybe you want to think about getting outside and shooting some pucks today, because I know you want to work on your slap shot. You want to get better at your slap shot. But yeah, it's just something that just came naturally to me, and I wanted to be, working at it to get better. So there was a lot of pressure. Yeah, it's, a lot of it was self-imposed. I think I'm somebody who's very hard on myself, but that's kind of a double-edged sword. There could be some negativity that comes along with it, but I also push myself very hard, and that oftentimes that has led to success. Not always, but I'm my own harshest critic. So I think later in college, there started to be a little bit of burnout towards the end, which is natural, right? Female hockey players previously, until within the last 10 years, really, I'd say most players sort of thought their careers would be over after college. There was nothing beyond that. I mean, there's some leagues in Europe. There was a CWHL, Canadian Women's Hockey League, that existed, that no longer exists. But there weren't a ton of opportunities beyond college for athletes, female hockey athletes. So that was sort of the end for me, like in my mind. It's hard to accept for sure, but going back to what I was saying earlier, I was always aspiring to like the next level. So when I was playing like youth club hockey in New Jersey, the next level for me was prep school hockey. In prep school, the next level that I aspired to was college and, national team. So I think it's awesome that women have something to aspire to beyond that now. I didn't. So because the end was sort of near my junior, senior year, and I wasn't performing my best on the ice either, I was starting to fall out of love with the game a little bit. And I hesitate to say that because that was honestly never really going to happen, but it felt that way, where it felt more like a job, honestly, at times. And, because at the end of the day, your schedule is so regimented that like you look at, like in college, for example, you look at other college students and you're like, wow, all they have to do is go to school. That must be so nice. Like, go to school, obviously get your work done and everything. Yeah. Like, it's not just that, but I'm just constantly thinking about how I'm feeling my body, sleep, making sure I'm getting enough meals in and, snacks and I'm hydrated and I'm mentally focused so that I'm ready to play in a game or, go to practice. I'm doing team lifts and workouts. I'm going to the shooting room. We're doing video. We're watching video as a team, analyzing our play on the ice. We're having team meetings about other things. So it's really like a full-time job being a Division I athlete. And it eventually, led to a little bit of burnout towards the end. And I took a couple of years off after college from hockey. I was coaching youth hockey. I actually worked at a hockey shop too while I was in grad school for a couple of years after undergrad, but I wasn't playing, at least not competitively. I wasn't training, working out really regularly. And I think that while that presented its downsides, because when I tried to get back into it competitively, it took like a full season really for me to feel comfortable on the ice. Yeah. Even like you take a week or two off from skating, you feel it when you get back on the ice. Like your legs are burning, you feel awkward and really rusty. So yeah, 2 years, it was tough, but at the same time, I think I needed that break in order to fall back in love with the game and sort of like take it back to my roots of like how I fell in love with the game and why, and, I was giving back to the game as a coach. That's something that I've always wanted to do, even when I was younger. And, I would volunteer a lot, helping teach hockey and work with kids who were younger than me. But yeah, that 2-year break was pretty nice. And I'm a big advocate. I mean, I tell my players now, like, you shouldn't be skating the entire summer. You don't need that. Play other sports. Multi-sport athletes are great. Play other sports. It's cross training.
Yes.
Have other hobbies and activities. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, because at the end of the day, like, for example, in college, you get injured. You want to make sure you're at a school that you're going to be happy at without your sport. So it's really important, I think, to be well-rounded.
That's a very good point, because I feel like, especially like, not to go off on a tangent about hustle culture, but everyone like gets caught up, or the idea of taking your hobby and making it your business, or everyone should be an entrepreneur in some way, have their own form of employment. That's where it gets lost, especially with like kids and sports and being the next, LeBron James or Rebecca Morse. It gets a little lost in there because people think that this is all they can be, or that's the one thing they aspire to be, because you take your hobby from what you did for fun by playing in the streets with your friends or your family, and now it's your full-time job, or it's one of your sources of income, and you don't see it as something you like to do anymore. So I feel like not necessarily everyone needs to take a 2 years break or a year break or ever from whatever they're doing, but step back and kind of reevaluate what it is and not just like trudge forward, because you might be trudging forward, but where are you going where you're trudging forward, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up because I definitely had an identity crisis during that 2-year period where I wasn't playing hockey. I'm like, who am I? What am I good at? Because, I grew up always being known as an athlete, and when that's taken away from you, it affects your confidence. It's like, okay, what now? what do I do with my life now? And obviously I ended up coming back to the game, and I really do that full time now. That I'm a coach. I'm a director of a girls hockey program here in New Jersey, and I play hockey professionally. So my life pretty much revolves around hockey. But at the same time, it's important to step back, like you said, and really figure out, who you are and other things that you're interested in, sort of diversify that way, because it's important to have more than one hobby. And sometimes when you pour yourself into something, like you said, becomes more of a job instead of a hobby. So finding the right balance is really important.
Exactly, because I feel like even in like, someone could like start knitting for fun, and then someone's like, you should put your knitting on Etsy, and then like now your full-time business is knitting, and now you don't have a hobby because you're like, oh, knitting is my hobby, but in reality knitting is now your job. And you need to find and have more than one hobby, or have more than, how people like always have more than one friend necessarily for different things. Like I feel like it gets lost in the quote unquote business sense or things like that. So that, I'm thankful for you brought that up, because I feel like that's really not talked about a lot, where
Yeah.
people lose sight of where they go. And I feel like that's why so many people don't get to where they want to be, is because they're burnt out at 14, because they've done it 5 years straight, no breaks or stuff like that. Hockey, again, as I said, is not a very well-known sport, especially women's hockey. And, you're trying to grow a sport that needs to grow overall. And so you're trying to grow a gender or a portion of that sport already. So what would you say are some of the misconceptions of hockey that you think people feel? Because like they say, oh, hockey's boring, which I kind of disagree. If you ever watch it, I quite disagree, but that's my personal opinion. What would you say are some of the misconceptions in hockey that you think fans should really enjoy or get into?
Well, hockey's a very fast sport. I think that's part of what attracted me to it. I watch any other sport now, and I'm like, this is like watching paint dry. But just the speed at which the game moves, and not just the puck, but like line changes. That's what people often ask me, like, how do you know when to come off the ice?
Yes, like I
And
just feel like y'all are just jumping off the thing, and I'm like, hold up, wait a minute now.
it's not always just like when you're tired. I mean, it should be when you're tired, because if you're going hard for an entire shift, you should be tired after about like 30, 45 seconds. So that's like how long shifts should be. But hockey's also known to be a physical sport. It is a physical sport, but I think that's changed a little bit over time. I mean, if you look at the men's side, it's become a bit more about, finesse, which is kind of what the women's game is more known for, because there's no checking in women's hockey. So that could be a misconception if people believe there are checking in women's hockey. Some people do, for sure. That's another topic that I could talk about all day. I wish there was checking, but at the same time, I think a lot of people appreciate the women's game because there's not, and you can sort of display skill and creativity a little more. And I also believe in that too. So it's a good debate, but yeah, I think there's a misconception that like hockey players don't have teeth. Again, that's a little bit more common on the men's side, but as you can see, I have all of mine. And women wear full cages. So even if a fight were to break out, no one's getting to your face. At least probably not. So yeah, going along with the physicality and the fighting, there's probably a stereotype of like everyone being like big and strong and like muscular and masculine, at least by like society's standards of what that looks like. But that's not always the case. You don't have to be huge to play hockey at all. And on, men's or women's side, like not not everyone is like that. I think that obviously like strength is important, but it's not just about the physicality of the game. There's also speed. There's a lot of strategy that goes into it. A lot of like systems from a team perspective. So it's not just a physical sport where, I think I just thought of this quote. Like I went to a fighting match and a hockey game broke out or something like that. When the point is like the hockey's all about fighting. It's really not. It's evolved, still present in the game. On the men's side, but it's changed a little bit and a little bit more about speed and skill, which I think is pretty cool because you have all these talented players. Like hockey is not MMA or anything like that. I'm sure the men, those guys who are fighters could probably hold their own in an MMA fight, but it's really about what you can do with the puck and away from the puck, and allowing that skill to manifest itself. So I think it's the best game in the world because I don't know, I'm just constantly impressed by what hockey players can do. I know that's kind of weird, like, because I am one, but
no,
it's a thick piece of steel that you're skating on that's like this big. You're not just skating, you're also maneuvering a puck. So
like I said, y'all are like above and beyond. Like first step, y'all are able to ice skate. Let's start there. And then you're like running on ice skates. And then you're like not like you're actually doing something while you're running on ice skates. It's like that's just the bare minimum of hockey. And then you're actually, scoring pucks and like doing all this other stuff. So like it's definitely a talented game. That's why I feel like the whole like aggressive, like hockey is fighting. Like that's just one of the things I quite never understood because I'm like, these people at bare minimum, they're able to ice skate. Like how many people can actually say they're half decent at ice skating,
Yeah, I know. And I give like anyone a lot of credit who gets into skating, especially at a younger age. Cause I work with a lot of like younger girls and some of them are a little apprehensive to get on the ice, but I think a lot of kids are fearless. At least that's how I was, because I didn't have that like awareness to realize like, oh, I could get seriously injured doing this.
You won the cup in 2018. How was that experience?
That was incredible. So we played that championship game in my home state in New Jersey, in Newark, which is like 15, 20 minutes from where I grew up. So that was pretty cool. Hoist the cup in front of friends and family. Was special. And then, the celebration afterwards, of course, was lots of fun. And having the cup too for just like a few weeks. Most of my teammates had the cup for like a week, but somehow I got it for like 2 or 3 weeks. And that's just like how the handoff worked from like me to the next person. I call her Izzy. Well, not just me, but Izzy for short. So Lady Isabel, who's Lord Stanley. Stanley Cup's named after Lord Stanley. Lady Isabel is Lord Stanley's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that piece of it is pretty cool. The education behind it, the reasoning behind it. But yeah, I had the cup. I think I took her Izzy everywhere. It was like over 4th of July, so like I took her to see fireworks. I had a cup party with family and friends, which was pretty special. I just sort of brought her everywhere and people would be staring at me.
Like who is this?
What is that cup?
Like, why is she walking around with this massive trophy? Like, come on now. It's the 4th of July fireworks. You're supposed to be like walking around with like little lighter things.
Yeah,
like why
sparklers.
do you have this? Why do you have this massive trophy with you?
It was a good conversation starter. Let's say that. And I love informing people about the league and about women's hockey. So I kind of like go out of my way to do that. So maybe it was a tactic in a way, but also I just like, why would cup's not going to sit at home, all day. I even brought her to work one day. So like all my coworkers could, see, and I could share it with them, which is pretty cool. Cause the people that I worked with at the time were, pretty big supporters of, my hockey career and, followed it. Just pretty special to me. Another cool thing that I did when we won it was, my team got invited to go to the New Jersey State House in Trenton, in the state capitol. and go to a General Assembly session with the cup. This is when I had it. And it was during the day, during the week. So I was the only one who could go. And I actually took off from work to go because I was like, raised in New Jersey. I can't miss this. Like, we're being honored. We're being recognized by the state. This is so cool. And I actually gave a speech to the General Assembly, which I was terrified to do. These are a bunch of like politicians and, lobbyists and stuff. And they're like, who is this? Who is this woman here with this giant trophy? But it was really cool and special to me because, like I mentioned, it's my home state, and to be honored was a really amazing experience. I also ended up going to there's like a Jersey expo that a teammate and I got invited to. There's just a bunch of like old school jerseys showcased in this convention center, and we brought the cup. So it's kind of like a little mini tour afterward during the celebration and the couple of weeks that I had the cup. So I'll never forget that. Obviously the game was super memorable as well, but it's really about the experiences that you share with other people and making them part of your success.
This year you guys were on NBC Sports. Like, that had to be
that was huge for the league, obviously. I'm used to watching other sporting events, mostly men's hockey and NHL on NBC Sports. So to be there, right alongside them, that's where we deserve to be. I think people are starting to realize that women's hockey is exciting, and just women's sports as a whole, deserve to be televised, and that exposure and accessibility is so important to growing the sport. It's not like we're, whether it's the NWHL, WNBA, NWSL, it's not like the athletes aren't putting a good product, on the ice, on the field, on the court. It's just that no one knows we're out here, So
You're yelling in the void. You're just yelling in the void.
Yeah, listen, you see us. You just want to be seen. That's what we need. We need sponsorships. We need TV deals, to be out there and get noticed and, build viewership and fans and loyalty. So that was a huge accomplishment for the league this season. And it's kind of cool to go back and watch on TV and be like, wow, that actually happened. Like
that was me.
We're here. We have a long way to go, but at least, we can check this one off the list.
Yeah, definitely. And then don't get me started on my sports business talk, but that whole idea that people have, not necessarily even women's sport or any sport that's not, the top 2 or 3 that everyone knows or whatever, the fact that it's no one wants to watch it. How do you know no one wants to watch it if you don't give them the opportunity to watch it?
Exactly.
If you just the NWSL, they're on Twitch right now, and they're getting a lot of streams and stuff like that. Just give them an opportunity. Don't give them one game and expect everyone to do that too, because I feel you give them one game and they're okay, they didn't perform well in this one game. Well, the one game was on 4th of July weekend that happened to also be the same day of the NBA finals. You gotta give people their chance. But that was a big thing for y'all, and I was really excited to see that. And that's kind of how I started, looking more into the NWHL and stuff like that too. So,
good, you're proving my point.
It worked.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the proven fact that if you put them on TV, people will watch and people will be entertained.
Yeah, and hopefully that, being on ABC Sports is laying the groundwork for, that was only a weekend event, laying the groundwork for a full season TV deal in the future.
It's going to be big for y'all, and I see it coming. Y'all just got a salary cap increase, and I was that's really working towards y'all go, so y'all can so more people will be able to do hockey full time and not have that side job, because it has to be hard trying to get a job when you have to play hockey, and most people aren't going to be no, Sarah, you can't you can't take off this many days. So that has to be difficult.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a coach now, so my vacation is a little different. But when I was working in business, um, I would use my vacation days as travel days for away trips often. So it's like, okay, well, if you run out of those, like, how do you go on vacation? So it's tough. You make a lot of sacrifices, but I think that it's a lot of, dedicated women who just want to see the sport grow and understand that it's not really for them. It's for the next generation. So, we're jumping through all these hoops and overcoming these hurdles so that they don't have to, right? And that's kind of like a common understanding of like, that's what we're here for. Obviously, we're all competitors. We want to win. We want to be the best. But at the same time, there's a much larger mission.
What is a SHIRSEY, and like what's the difference between a SHIRSEY and a jersey?
So a jersey is a jersey, right? A SHIRSEY is a t-shirt version of a jersey.
Oh, why didn't they just call it a t-shirt? Like that would be so much easier just to call it a t-shirt.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right, but I don't know. Maybe they want to make it seem more appealing or throw people off. I don't know.
Because like I was genuinely confused. Now, yes, I could have like clicked on the link and like found out it was like a t-shirt or whatever. And I'll have her links down below because they get commission from their sales of their jerseys and jerseys. So make sure you go buy Rebecca's stuff too. But
yeah, I think maybe it's just to distinguish from a t-shirt with a logo on the front and no name and number on the back. That kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah,
but thank you for the plug on the commissions. Players do get 15% of the proceeds from their jersey and jersey sales. So yeah, definitely check that out.
You won the 2020 Foundation Award for the NWHL, and you do a lot of work with Black girls hockey. Like, tell us a little bit about the work you do from when you're not on the.
I started doing a lot more with Black Girl Hockey Club, I think, in the last year. I need to plug them now because they're just an incredible organization. It's really centered on getting more BIPOC players mostly, and more focused on women, into the game of hockey, and not just as players, as athletes, but in the media, coaching, referees, fans, whomever. So their mission is one that I align with because earlier I touched on like a little bit of the barriers to entry for the sport. It is a very white, male-dominated sport, and that's something that, well, one, why there needs to be equal opportunities for everyone, regardless of race or gender, and two, it's really limiting the sport in terms of growth, right? Because if it's only one subgroup of people primarily getting into the sport, it's just not going to reach its potential in terms of growth.
Yeah.
So, I'm really passionate about that cause, and so I've done a lot of work with Black Girl Hockey Club, and trying to increase accessibility to the game and diversify it more, because again, hockey is growing hockey, and leaving the sport better than I found it is, I think, what I was put on this planet to do. So that's really aligned with my goals and my mission. And definitely check out Black Girl Hockey Club if you're not familiar with them. They host a lot of panel discussions, seminars and whatnot, and so I've learned a lot from them. and in terms of how I can be a more welcoming, inclusive athlete to my teammates, to fans, and I think I've grown a lot just through my relationship with them. But I think prior to that, and sort of my one of the big projects that I worked on that probably led to winning the Foundation Award in 2020 was a holiday toy drive for an organization called Oasis. It's local to New Jersey. They're actually in Paterson, New Jersey. And it's really dedicated to women and children. I think their tagline is like a safe haven for women and children. So what goes into that is, educational programs for women, and, care for their children while they're doing that. Teaching them English. If you look at like the demographic of that area, I think there's a large Black population and Latina. So some of them might be first generation here, and, not know, the language, but also just educational programs, helping them get their GED, and really helping them, like, for example, during the pandemic, they were putting together, thousands and thousands of meals for people who were, out of work and couldn't afford food or care for their kids. So I helped organize, I'd done some work with them before and helped organize a toy drive at a Riveters home game. And we had it was between 200 and 300 gift donations from just a single game, which was pretty awesome. I don't even think I set a goal, to be quite honest, but if I had, that would have exceeded it by far. So that was pretty cool to be able to give during the holidays.
Rebecca's goal is for New Jersey to be like the growing ground of female hockey players. She was like, I was the sole responsibility for why this is the best place to play hockey in the world. That's her new tagline. That's her new byline under her name now.
Yeah, I don't know if you could tell, but I'm pretty passionate about Riveters. As you can see by my mug, Rosie the Riveter, and obviously hockey, and
everybody's got a little pride from where they came from, even though they might not think they do. Everyone's a little biased towards it. Podcast here, we do this thing. I say this, you tell us the first thing that comes to your mind, and maybe a little story behind it if you have one. So the first thing is hockey.
That is the hardest one ever. Everything pops into my head. I mean, I'm going to say NWHL, Metropolitan Riveters. And for those of you who don't know, I showed you my mug because our logo is Rosie the Riveter. So I'm a big Rosie the Riveter fan. I have a lot of Rosie the Riveter items throughout my apartment. I have a coffee mug. I have a bunch of glasses in my kitchen. Some socks, some Rosie the Riveter socks. But yeah, that's the first thing I think of now.
If you're listening to this, you could see Rebecca's face being like, wow, I have a lot of Rosie the Riveter stuff. It was she was actually calculating whoa, maybe it's a little too much.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't share everything.
Yeah, then the next thing is 2 girls, 1 fork.
Foodie. That is my Foodstagram that I started with my girlfriend about a year ago, I think. We haven't been as active on it, unfortunately. Don't tell anyone. But I'm really passionate about food also. And, going out, not just cooking, but going out and exploring different restaurants, different types of cuisines. I like to consider myself a pretty adventurous eater. So it's a hobby of mine. I'm pretty much always watching hockey or Food Network.
Thank you so much for being up here. Rebecca, tell everyone where they can find you. Instagram, the internet, hockey, wherever.
Instagram, Twitter. My handle's the same on both those. It's at Moose, MOOSE _X_ING. Find 2 girls, 1 fork to my the foodie Instagram account through my account as well.
All that will be in the episode notes description below. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashleigh.
Be safe, have fun, and don't be afraid to join the convo.